Yeah, wanted to mix it up. Stephen Mann, of course, most well known for his Pro Tour top 8 at Pro Tour Gatecrash, I believe, in Montreal. We had that players to watch list up there. We didn't see any 6-0s. Honestly, he probably should have been on the list.
Yeah.
That's on me. But yeah, this man probably found out I hadn't listed him in the top 10 and wants to prove a point.
Yeah, Stephen Mann, a lot of success in the Open Series, also has a Pro Tour top 8, so very accomplished player from Florida. He's been traveling a lot more lately to these series just because he says he loves to play Magic.
For sure.
Boswell, a New York native, good friends with Reed Duke, having a lot of success this weekend, hoping to keep that streak running with a second top 8 here this weekend.
Yeah, Boswell picked up his second top 8 on the Open Series and his second fifth place finish.
Second fifth place finish. Wow.
Yeah, so he hasn't quite pulled out a trophy yet, but
he's getting there.
Yeah, he's gotten really close a couple of times. Now there's not a lot of room to improve when you pick up a second place finish on Saturday, but there is room.
There's one.
Yes.
You can do one better.
You sure can. And I believe that Andy Boswell is taking that to heart.
Yeah, so both players here, a win will almost assure them a slot into this top 8. So a very important round for both players here. Looks like Stephen Mann is going to mulligan down to 6. Andrew is comfortable with his opening 7. And Sneak and Show versus Bug Delver, how do you feel this matchup plays out?
Well, that's close. It is a very close matchup. Bug Delver, of course, has a lot of interaction on the stack. It has access to, of course, Force of Will, Daze. Some lists have Spell Pierces on top of that, which, in fact,
he has one copy main.
Yeah, one Spell Pierce main and 2 more on the board. So you can interact pretty well on the stack, but you actually also have other means of interaction that are relevant. Hymn to Turok is a pretty big deal. Liliana of the Veil is...
Yes.
You, of course, can't put Liliana of the Veil into play off of a Sneak and Show, but it's a pretty cheap spell anyway. It is a very strong insurance against Sneak and Show.
Yeah, even against...
against Show and Tell.
Yeah, so even against a turn 2 Show and Tell, if you can just get a land in the play, you could potentially just cast it next turn because it's so cheap. So Steve definitely has the tools to defeat Sneak and Show, but Sneak and Show is very explosive. We saw it on camera earlier, Todd Anderson playing it. Todd Anderson made short work of his opponent, so we'll see if Boswell can do the same here. It looks like Mann is deciding if he wants to keep his openings, his mulligan here.
Yeah, the Show and Tell versus Delver matchups are generally very close. In the case of Bug as opposed to Rug, Bug has a little more of a sturdy package of interaction, but the concession it makes when you compare it to Rug is that the clock is not nearly as strong.
Yeah, you don't have as good enough clock. You have basically the same suite of permission, but like you said, you don't. You're giving up some speed for more disruption.
Right. Yeah, you lose out on Nimble Mongoose, and probably more importantly in the matchup, you lose out on Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, Lightning Bolt, Nimble Mongoose obviously, but really, yeah, that reach that you need to kind of do those last 3 points of damage.
Yeah.
Plus, but then again, you're cutting cards like Stifle, which aren't really that good in this matchup.
No.
You know?
Yeah, Stifle doesn't do a ton. I said that. Stifle is occasionally relevant against Gristlebrand.
Yeah, occasionally you could stop a Gristlebrand, you could stop the Emrakul Annihilation trigger, but generally it's if Rug is doing that, it's not really what it's hoping for,
True. Yeah, well, kind of. You get in spots where you just have that one Stifle up your sleeve.
Yeah.
And that buys you the turn you need to untap and win.
Yeah.
Again, you can do that with both the Annihilator trigger and the Gristlebrand activation. Both of those in the right spot.
Oh yeah.
Just stopping that for one turn is the game.
And we've definitely seen that before, where the Stifle kind of played right into what the Delver deck was trying to do here. But I kind of like the fact that swapping the black for more disruption is probably much more relevant in this particular match.
Yeah, you mentioned Steve Mann is probably more well known for playing Rug Delver. Honestly, so is Andy Boswell.
Yeah,
I think this is the first time I've seen Boswell not play Rug Delver.
Yeah, I have not. He's played Rug Delver a lot, and I have not seen him play this deck before. So
I haven't either. I'm curious what kind of subtle shifts in the metagame triggered both of these players to move off.
Yeah. So Boswell's going to lead with a Scalding Tarn here. He sacrifices it and he goes for a basic island. This doesn't expose him to Wasteland. But again, Sneak and Show, a very good deck at protecting itself from Wasteland. So plays a lot of basics.
Yeah. And these players at the top of the standings, they've been sitting next to each other on and off in several rounds by now. They certainly know the matchup before they even begin playing.
Yeah, and I got to say, it's pretty impressive. Boswell made top 8 of the Standard Open with green-white aggro, a deck that he's played a lot. I mean, he's played it for over a year. Whereas in this time, he's 6-0 with Sneak and Show, and like you said, he does not play this deck very often. So it kind of just goes to show you his versatility. I mean, he's able to pick up this deck. Obviously, he probably played it in the past, probably tested it a little bit, but obviously much more familiar with Rug Delvers. So,
yeah, you would think. I'm always kind of the opinion that combo decks in Legacy are the beatdown of Legacy.
Yeah.
Gristlebrand is the new Goblin guide. That's kind of the way I look at it.
You basically like your rounds to be over as quickly as possible.
Yeah, like the actual fast clocks in Legacy are the show and tell decks,
Yes.
the ad nauseum decks, the reanimator decks, things like that.
Yeah, Steven's deck is much more of a grindy type of eventually just put a firm lock on the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, Steven's 5-card hand isn't that bad.
It is not. It had a Wasteland, which would have been more significant against a different draw from Boswell. He would have been happy to get some actual use out of that.
Wow, so turn 2 show and tell with Daze backup, with protection rather.
Yeah, and Steven just looks at that Daze in his hand.
And I think Steven just has a land that he can put into play. Now, again, depending on what Boswell puts into play, a top deck Liliana is still live for Steven, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And there's a Brainstorm there, right?
Yes. Yeah, it looks like a Brainstorm
yeah,
and a Daze.
So Steven is going to get a chance to go digging, take a peek at 3 additional cards. If he finds a Force of Will with which to pitch his Daze, that would be effective. If he finds another land and a Liliana, he can set things up that way.
Unfortunately, the 3 cards he found are not very good against show and tell. We have Ponder, Verdant Catacombs, and an Abrupt Decay, which is almost as dead as you can get in a matchup.
It is. He did find a fetch land, so he can put the fetch land into play off of the show and tell and then crack it before he takes his next draw step. And that's going to give him one last opportunity to draw Liliana.
Exactly, yes. So assuming Boswell puts an Emrakul into play as opposed to Grizzlebrand.
Sure, yeah.
Grizzlebrand's obviously much worse because Boswell will be able to draw a bunch of cards and potentially get into a Force of Will to stop Liliana. But if it is an Emrakul, Steven still has outs here.
Right.
Like you said, he could put the sack land into play, sack it so he doesn't draw the 2 cards that he put back on top of Brainstorm, and try to draw one of his, I believe, 2 Lilianas in his deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like as you said, if it's Gristlebrand waiting in Boswell's hand, I think the game's over.
Yeah, and again, that's also assuming Boswell doesn't have like a Spell Pierce or a Force of Will in order to stop that.
Yeah. No, actually, what it could be is Sneak Attack. I think that's,
true.
That's a pretty reasonable plan here for Boswell as well, to actually show Sneak Attack into play so that he can immediately activate it and attack with Emrakul.
Yep.
Given that he is playing against a Liliana deck, I actually think that's a safer line if you just have Emrakul.
If you have Emrakul, if you have Sneak Attack though, and Emrakul, I agree with you.
Okay, and this man actually sees that, I think, and the use of the Daze there basically keeps him off of activating the Sneak Attack if that is what's coming down.
And instead, it is the Grizzlebrand.
The Grizzle Daddy himself.
Steven doesn't really have many ways to kill that short of a Liliana the Veil. He can bounce it with Jace, but we're probably not going to get to that point in the game. Yeah, unlike Rug Delver, when you put a Grizzlebrand into play against Rug Delver, the game's over. I mean, they have no ways to really deal with that unless they have a lot of pressure on the board.
Right.
Whereas in this matchup, Steven can actually kind of interact with that somehow with Liliana the Veil. But again, I think because he dazed, he probably won't have enough turns to do that. And again, he's going to be able to draw a bunch of cards off Grizzlebrand, so
yeah.
Likely not going to matter.
Basically, every combat step is another 7 cards. I would be surprised if this man actually gets a second turn after this next one. Because if Boswell goes digging again, he can easily find the Sneak Attack and I guess he actually used 2 of his Lotus Petals, although he does get one. He just shuffles one back here by pitching the Emrakul.
So pretty much the double whammy for Steven. Not only does he have to mulligan to 5, but Boswell gets pretty good start with turn 2 show and tell, and he even has the 2 Lotus Petals to play around the Daze that Steven did have.
Sure. Well, that's how you want it to match up, right? You want your opponent's best draw to come in the game that you want.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, all right, I'm mulling the 5, fine. Get your nut draw now. And let's play fair games the rest of the turn, the rest of the time.
Yeah, you seem like, ideally, he wants Boswell to have his second best draw next game when he has just the nut 7.
On the play.
Yeah, on the play, yeah. Just gotta match up slightly better. That's all it's about.
Just a little bit better.
Yeah.
So Boswell here looking good with a turn 2 Grizzlebrand. Steven draws a Hymn to Torah, and he's going to cast the one he already had in his hand. Boswell did activate Grizzlebrand's ability last turn, so he's got a full grip currently.
Yeah. And the kind of the dichotomy of boards here is just comical. I love the comparison of someone casting Hymn to Turok when there is a Grizzlebrand. It's like I know you're going to have 21 cards next turn, but I'm taking these 2 now.
Nope, I do not want you to do that. Yes.
Fair enough. All right.
Steven's had enough.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can see on his face, he knew there was nothing happening there.
So both players go into their sideboard now, and Boswell, he's got to be feeling good. He's up a game, pretty much dismantled Mann game 1. What do you think he does after board?
Well, the sideboards of these Sneak and Show decks are fairly stock at this point, but this is not a deck I've ever played, so I am actually not positive how you approach this matchup. He has access to 3 Pyroclasm, 2 Swan Song, 1 Shattering Spree, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 3 Blood Moon, 1 Echoing Truth, 1 Bosaiju who shelters all, and 3 Through the Breach. I think Blood Moon is the card you want to lean on here.
Yeah, I like Blood Moon a lot, particularly because really the Bug deck has no basics. Like, it really can't afford to play basic lands, similar to Rug Delver, where you just can't afford to play basics because you have so many color requirements. So Blood Moon's actually really devastating against Steven's deck, and Boswell has the ability to cast it on turn 2,
Sure.
either through Lotus Petal or an Ancient Tomb or Signature.
Yeah, and well, he can cast it on turn 1 even.
Yeah,
through
that's true.
Ancient Tomb and Lotus Petal. Steven has Deathrite Shamans, so he could, in theory, still continue to cast some spells.
Yeah, but not most of his deck gets turned off. I mean, that was actually you saw some Bug Delver decks. I think Jerry T talked about this too, where they would play 1 swamp so that they could if they ever got a Deathrite Shaman to play, they can actually search for a swamp, cast a Deathrite Shaman, so Abrupt Decay was still live for them.
Yeah.
So they can cast it under a Blood Moon. Unfortunately, he does not have that swamp in his deck. So really, Deathrite Shaman, even if he has it in play, kind of shuts down most of his deck. He can cast like Tarmogoyf, Delver's Secrets. Really can't cast the important spells though that kind of help him win this matchup. He could cast a second Deathrite Shaman and then suddenly the party gets started.
Yeah.
But obviously Blood Moon's a card that I think Boswell wants to see.
I definitely like Blood Moon here. Pyroclasm's a reasonable possibility. There are Deathrite Shamans and Delver of Secrets, but I'm not sure that's the game that Boswell wants to play. I think he is faster than that and doesn't really need to worry about it. I think Pyroclasm is more for disruptive small creatures, meddling mages and things of that nature. Other than that, the 1 Bosaiju who shelters all, that seems reasonable. I could see an argument for the Swan Songs, but I think Blood Moon is the one real slam dunk out of Boswell's sideboard.
Yeah, it seems like Boswell could play a game where he's like, all right, well, if my opponent doesn't have a Deathrite Shaman in play and I can resolve a Blood Moon, I just win. Yeah. So maybe that's another way for him to win. Once he gets that in play, he can just bide his time and wait. You know, he can literally wait until he gets 15 mana and just hardcast Emrakul. You know what I mean? It's like there's really very little man can do if there's a Blood Moon result and he doesn't have a Deathrite in play. So that certainly could be Boswell's plan. In terms of Steven's sideboard, he's got 2 copies of Golgari Charm, 2 Vendilion Click, 2 Spell Pierce, 2 Submerge, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Null Rod, Disfigure, Dismember, a Life from Loam, and a Thought Seize. Not too many cards that he wants against Show and Tell, Sneak and Show. Obviously, Vendilion Click is great because, 1, it can disrupt Andy's hand, but it could also allow him to play something at the end of Andrew's turn, so he doesn't have to tap his mana in his turn. So if he has cards like Spell Pierce, he can kind of hold that mana up. He also has, I think, an extra copy of Thoughtseize in his sideboard, which, again, another disruption spell that I think is going to be coming in as well, along with 2 more copies of Spell Pierce, so bringing your total count up to 3. So I like his sideboard of Thoughtseize, 2 Vendilion Clicks, and 2 Spell Pierce. So that's basically 5 cards they can bring in for this matchup, which, again, I don't know if this matchup's really that much in his favor. Game 1, I think he probably needs a lot more help after board, but maybe these 5 cards are good enough.
Well, they're what he has.
Yeah,
so,
there's really, I mean, I'm not sure if he basically felt like his matchup's not that bad and he didn't need that much against Show and Tell, or if maybe it was just a concession where, because the problem with Legacy is there's just so many decks that you can't really devote too many sideboard slots to a specific deck.
Yeah, for sure. Generally with combo, I think, in Legacy, there's, at any given Legacy tournament, there is at most like 1 combo deck that is going to be enough of a presence that you can actually play devoted sideboard cards. You know, like Graveyard Hate. Graveyard Hate is a little more broad, but things like people used to have Humilities and Oblivion Rings that they could bring in specifically to answer Show and Tell. Say this time last year, Sneak and Show was kind of like coming out in force for the first time, and that was reasonable to have actual things like, like moats and snaring bridges, cards of that nature. At this point, I think you actually want your anti-combo sideboard cards to just be good against combo broadly.
Yeah, like Vendilion Click or Spell Pierce, stuff like that.
And I think Steve Mann has accomplished that. Obviously, they're a little less impactful, which can come back to bite him. But he can use those same thoughts he uses in Spell Pierces against Storm decks, against things like Reanimator and Dredge. Honestly, they're all still good against Elves, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah.
Elves leaning more heavily on spells than they did in the past because of natural order, because of, obviously Green Sun Zenith is still around, but you're not even unhappy about a card like Spell Pierce there. And that is probably the second most popular combo deck behind Sneak and Shade. Maybe even honestly, Elves is probably more popular than Sneak and Shade.
I think I've been seeing a lot of Elf players. I think Elves is probably the most popular combo deck in Legacy right now. Sneak and Show, Storm, probably the number 2A, 2B maybe.
Yeah.
I've been seeing a lot of Storm decks too, but
now to be fair, Elves you can fight on a whole lot of other levels.
Yes.
And we see that in Span's sideboard. He has Golgari Charms to sweep, he has Graph Digger's Cages to turn off the search effect. But so he does that, as I said, the one combo deck that you have to fight, he has dedicated slots for.
And it's funny though, but even those slots are sort of still versatile. Golgari Charm, you can bring it in against Death and Taxes. Graph Digger's Cage, you can bring it in against Dredge. So that's the thing about Legacy. I think your sideboard cards have to be somewhat versatile because there's just too many decks, you know? So both players here examining their opening 7, they both are going to keep. So better start for Mann than game 1.
Yeah, a more plentiful start.
He's going to open with a Ponder, Underground Sea into a Ponder. See if he gets some of the disruption. Looks like he has a Daze.
Does have a Daze that's ready.
And a Click. So Daze, Click, maybe him there as well?
I believe that was a him. That was the Howling Wolf him.
Oh, wow. So it looks like his top 3 cards are Spell Pierce, Liliana, Veil. So definitely has the cards he needs to kind of deal with Sneak and Show right now.
Yeah. This is a very strong start for Steven. The one thing that is currently missing in his hand is a clock.
Yeah, it doesn't have a clock. And Boswell, it looks like he did draw a sideboarded Blood Moon, so if he can get that to resolve, and plus a Gataxian Probe will help him know what to play around. He's going to see the Spell Pierce, which is actually, maybe that's a mistake on Steven's part, drawing that Spell Pierce.
Yeah, they draw something.
Maybe if you draw Liliana Veil instead, because, or actually, nah, maybe, it depends on, what do you want him to know?
Yeah, like, was the third card was a land, right? Like maybe
so
I'm drawing the land. Actually, that's
you could probably draw the Bayou,
Yeah. Okay.
Because you're not casting Liliana Veil on turn 2, and I don't think you're going to sacrifice anything unless you have a sack land. Yeah, you can play the Bayou and cast him.
And cast him, for sure. So yeah, I think you're right. It actually you gain a little bit of value there. So now Boswell does know about that Spell Pierce.
So I think
it's pretty likely, a somewhat likely possibility that he would have tried to go for a fast show and tell with 1 mana up to play around Daze there.
And now he knows he has to play around Daze and Spell Pierce. So Steven's got to navigate, Andrew can navigate correctly, knowing that if he can just get that Blood Moon to resolve, he's likely going to win.
And we'll see if he does have just Ponder.
And that's why I really like Blood Moon out of the sideboard of Sneak and Show, is that there's some decks where you just can't beat it, So it's just another way for you to kind of win, quote unquote, without really having to worry about, okay, what ways do they have to stop me from getting an Emerald Crow or Grizzlebrand into play, or how much permission do I have to fight through? It's like, nope, I basically have this one card that's going to shut down your entire deck.
Yeah, and more than that, there are actually a good number of decks that have non-basic lands that interact with your combo in really frustrating ways.
So it can work double duty, especially against a deck like Death and Taxes. You probably
a deck like Death and Taxes with its multiple Karakas, the full-blown lands deck that, of course, have Karakas in addition to things like Maze of Ith.
Oh, yeah, lands. Yeah, Kurt Spies plays that deck a lot. He's here, I believe, in attendance, and obviously, or actually, I'm not sure, but that deck, obviously, a contender in Legacy as well, so Blood Moon very effective against them as well.
Yeah, Blood Moon does a lot of work in this format.
Yeah, just because a lot of these decks play so many powerful cards, but they also have a lot of color requirements. You're playing Jace, you're playing Tarmogoyf, you're also playing Liliana Veil, so you can't really afford to play basic lands, You want to be able to go Deathrite Shaman or Delver of Secrets on turn 1, and if you get Wastelanded, you're still fine because you can get other colors, so not really, you can't really afford to play basic lands with a lot of these decks.
So Steven's going to crack a fetch land there, so he is giving up the Bayou, I believe. So I guess he's happy with the mana development that he currently has.
So it looks like he wants to cast Hymn to Torek here. And Hymn to Torek could get that Blood Moon.
It could. There's some tension here. Yeah, he cast Hymn to Torek. That actually takes the shields down.
Yes.
I guess there's an argument that the Spell Pierce it's not so important to leave Spell Pierce up when Boswell knows about it.
Yeah.
But I mean, play him and you potentially expose yourself to it. If there's any situation where Boswell can see that he can win through a daze, he's going to go for it here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, you snipe 2 cards from his hand, so that makes that situation slightly less likely.
Yeah. So it looks like Steven's just going to pick 2 cards at random.
I love this dance that plays out. I got my start playing Magic online.
Yeah.
So I never played, back in the day when Hymn was like a real card in Standard.
Oh, you missed out.
I heard. So yeah, I never got to do the kind of shuffle them around and pick 2 at random or whatever. Like just the manual process of resolving Hymn to Torek.
Wow.
Just tickles me every time.
Looks like he got a Volcanic Island and a Ponder. So the Blood Moon is still in Boswell's hand. So this is going to be a really tricky spot for Boswell. He's going to pass the turn. He's got a Brainstorm. Let's see if Steven tries to get a Liliana Veil into play this turn.
Yeah, Boswell, of course, no way to... Did we see a Lotus Petal or anything like that to actually just try and jam this turn?
Yeah, I don't think he has one in his hand, at least.
But even if he did have it, of course, he knows about days.
Yeah.
So you would need at least a second Lotus Petal.
Mm-hmm.
I think Boswell's content to bide his time here.
So if you're Steven, do you play Click or do you play Liliana the Veil here?
I think you play the land and pass. I think you want to leave up that Spell Pierce and Daze to dissuade Boswell from any funny business, and then hopefully get a free end step to play the Click as kind of a test spell or an opportunity to see that the coast is clear.
Yep. See the coast is clear, get a threat into play. Yeah, I agree with you. I like just passing, but it looks like he's going to main phase, crack him, fetch land. Probably get a Bayou here, maybe a Tropical Island.
Yeah, so the fact that he's cracking here kind of makes me suspect that he's going to go for the Liliana, but maybe he's just going and getting that out of the way.
Yeah, maybe.
There is the possibility that the Boswell can somehow respond to the fetch land to take him off of Vendilion Click if that comes up. So
that's true.
Yeah, there's an argument for just going ahead and doing it. I've never heard of a sneak and show deck that plays Stifle, but I don't want to rule it out either. That could be a thing.
It's true. Plus, if he suspects Boswell might go Brainstorm and then sack Misty Rainforest, like you said, click. You might just click there. But again, clicking main phase seems risky against Sneak and Show.
Yeah, it does.
So it looks like he just main phase, and he's just gonna draw his card for the turn. Again, he knows about Spell Pierce. He knows about Daze. And yes, Boswell, wary of casting Brainstorm into Spell Pierce. It looks like he just passed. Doesn't have a 3rd mana, and now we're going to see a Click enter play. So very tough spot for Boswell here.
Yeah, that's the window that Steven needed. Boswell could fight over it. That's a reasonable thing. But if he fights here, he's less likely to win the fight over Liliana.
Yeah, I think Boswell has to cast Brainstorm in response, and it looks like he is, yeah. So he has a window. Steven tapped out, so he can't cast Spell Pierce now. And Andrew has a mana up so that he can play around Daze. So now he's able to resolve a Brainstorm. Unfortunately, this is the end of his turn, so he won't be able to make a land drop.
Yeah. The one thing what I would like to get clarified here is this Brainstorm in response to the Click being cast or in response to the Click choosing a target? Because honestly, if Boswell just responds to the spell with a Brainstorm, then and the Vendilion Click then resolves, I might be inclined to target myself.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
but the only thing is Steven's got some pretty good cards in his hand. I think the only spells left in his hand are like counter spells, like Daze and Spell Pierce.
Daze, Pierce, Liliana, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's right.
So I don't know if you want to get rid of any of those.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think you'd rather get perfect information.
You're right.
Yeah, so it looks like Boswell drew a Spell Pierce. Unfortunately, I don't think he can even really cast it because Steven does have a Daze. So if Steven decides to go for the Liliana Veil next turn, it probably will resolve.
Yeah, Steven does have that extra land, right?
I think he shuffled away the Bayou, so I'm not sure if he might have an extra land in his hand. So either way, he's going to be able to play around Daze.
I believe caught a glimpse at a 4th land there. So yeah, 4th land to back that up is huge. Lets him actually cast Daze and Spell Pierce to go with his Liliana. The question then becomes, is Liliana enough of a lock?
Oh yeah, I definitely don't think it's enough of a lock, but
Yeah.
it's certainly exactly what Steven needs.
Right.
I mean, he needs something. He's got a threat and a planeswalker, so let's see if Boswell can do anything. And the tough spot for Boswell is he can't really go for a non-basic land because Steven does have wastelands in his deck. So if he goes for Volcanic Island, which it looks like he does,
Yeah.
he's in a tough spot if Steven draws a wasteland.
Yeah.
But if he doesn't, if he goes for a basic island, he's basically not going to be able to cast the Blood Moon in his hand potentially.
Right,
So,
and I think that's the most important consideration. You can't cut yourself off of being able to cast the card that theoretically wins it for you.
yeah, so Boswell in a really tough spot here. Even if he does get the Blood Moon into play, Steven does have a threat already, so.
Okay. And there's a Through the Breach there in Boswell's hand. That's interesting. That's not a card that I would have expected to matter in this matchup. I'm not necessarily doubting it. I'm willing to believe that Boswell knows what he's doing here more than I would. But it's just not a card that would have been on my radar.
Yeah.
That feels to me like it is more meant to get around sorcery speed interaction.
And if you're Boswell here, I mean, if you're Steven here, do you take anything? Do you take the Blood Moon, knowing that you can counter it? I mean, obviously, Through the Breach gets around Liliana.
Yeah, I think you're totally fine with this. You get an opportunity to play your land, play Liliana, Pierce, Boswell's Pierce, and then you're fine there. And then you'll have a days left over to, like, if Andy goes for Blood Moon.
Well, if the problem is if Boswell draws Ancient Tomb City of Traders, and you use the Spell Pierce, then that Blood Moon's resolving, and then that means that the chance of getting a Through the Breach to resolve increases greatly for Boswell.
It does. On the other hand, it's not the end of the world at this point if Blood Moon resolves, because you'll have a Liliana and a Vendilion Clique in play, as you said.
Well, it's the end of the world if Blood Moon resolves and allows him to cast Through the Breach Emrakul. That's the only way. Yeah. So it looks like he's going to take the Blood Moon, and Boswell will draw a card from Click's ability. And now we're going to go on to Steven's turn, I believe. So let's see. Mann's going to get a card for the turn, and it's a Force of Will.
That's big.
Good draw there. Now he has basically a hard counter and then a daze or a pierce, depending on what he wants to pitch to the Force.
Yeah, so just has all the options here. And interestingly, is this gonna jam into Spell Pierce here? I guess he has the daze, but
Yeah, maybe he wants him to actually play the Spell Pierce, which is odd. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure why. Yeah, I mean,
like, the choice is, do you want to
You know
use
he doesn't
Spell
have a
Pierce
daze.
here,
You know-
or daze?
yeah, I think he basically said, I want to use Spell Pierce. Spell Pierce is probably more effective.
Okay. And, an argument there, I think, is just having an extra card in your hand for Liliana is probably an edge. So that makes sense. The more I think about it, in my head, the way I had kind of like planned out the next couple turns, I would have been eager to Spell Pierce there, just so you can leave days up later. But you know, don't have to like keep your 1 mana up and all that. But
Yeah.
I guess we're kind of past the point where that matters.
So Boswell draws a Grizzlebrand for the turn. Unfortunately, he had to discard the Through the Breach last turn. And again, Liliana will be attacking his hand, so doesn't really have that much to work with. I imagine Steven's not going to play any other spells this turn, so he can keep other spells this game, or even lands, just so he can have a Force of Will and a blue card in his hand. And he'll just keep upticking Liliana and discarding whatever he draws.
Pitch that Delver of Secrets. In theory, you could increase your clock pretty substantially by playing Delver, but you're probably right. I don't think that actually matters. I think just leaving up. Well, maybe he just doesn't activate Liliana at all. Maybe having Force plus Spell Pierce is more important.
Well, the problem is that you don't necessarily increase the clock that much, right? Because Boswell's at 10.
Well, no, rather not cast the Delver, but just hold it to pitch the Force of Will. And then then you have a Force and a Spell Pierce.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying here. So just don't uptick because you want 2 counter spells, and then the next turn you uptick.
Yeah. But it looks like just Pierce and Force good enough for Steven Mann. So good enough, and I don't necessarily blame him.
And plus, you get a chance to maybe up Ultimate Liliana too the turn before you're going to kill him. So that's another consideration for him. So
currently, you were basically asking Boswell to have exactly Show and Tell, Emrakul, or Show and Tell, Gristlebrand, Force of Will, blue card, as he has 4 cards in hand in order to be punished by that. Or misdirection, I suppose.
Boswell.
Yeah, this Liliana, the longer it stays in play, the further and further in the hole Boswell falls.
And yeah, it looks like Boswell doesn't really have too many outs here. I believe his life total is at 4 now. He's going to go to 1.
And every turn, you know, this man draws a spell that would be reasonable to cast. You gotta have to reassess the situation. Like, do I want to pitch this? Is this card more valuable than one loyalty on Liliana?
Despite how dominating Steven's board looks, there are still a lot of decisions he has to make.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to lose, given how good your board is right here.
Yep.
Liliana's close to getting ultimated, and it looks like he is just going to cash it in here.
Just double Stone Rain mode. Yeah, I can get behind that.
I mean, yeah, what's the worst thing that happens here? He goes land, show, and tell. You have a counter spell, but he would need a counter backup. He only has 3 cards in his hand. So
this again does let. Well, I said that. It looks like there's a Verdant Catacombs. That's not a blue card, so not going to be able to force plus Spell Pierce here if it comes up. But I would be very surprised if it came up, particularly since Boswell's scooping up his cards.
Yep. So Boswell loses game 2, and it kind of shows you how important being on the play is for Boswell's deck, because if he was on the play, he can get that Blood Moon into play before the click resolved. And Mann did have a daze, but let's see if Boswell can get that Blood Moon draw in game 2. And again, Steven now knows about Blood Moon. Obviously, it's not a card that a lot of show and tell decks play. I mean, it is popular, but there are show and tell decks like we saw Todd Anderson. He did not have Blood Moon in his sideboard.
Right.
So Steven doesn't know for sure whether or not Boswell is going to have Blood Moon in game 2, but now he does, and maybe he just plays accordingly. Maybe he it affects what kind of hands he keeps, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a card that kind of rotates in and out of these Sneak and Show sideboards. Another card that kind of falls in that category is Jace the Mind Sculptor. You'll sometimes see lists. Chris Van Meter, the list that he was playing for a good while, had actually 2 Jaces in the main, and then another in the, I believe in at least 1 more, maybe 2 more in the board. And he just kind of like shifted into a Jace control deck that happened to have a combo win.
Yeah, why not? I mean, you can win with Jace. I like those strategies just because, Jace, Blood Moon, those are cards that you can win with on their own sometimes against certain decks. So if you think your opponent's bringing in a lot of hate cards, rather than try to deal with their hate, just try to win the old-fashioned way with a Planeswalker or a really annoying enchantment.
Yeah, it's interesting to see the kind of evolution of Plan Bs. Back in the day, the old, the Tricks, the bargain combo decks.
Yeah.
Post-board, they would be trying to go, turn 1 Ritual, Phyrexian, Negator.
Yeah.
They were just trying to sidestep the hate that way. Jace the Mind Sculptor doing a Phyrexian Negator impression.
Yep.
It's not something you would ever really expect to see, but here we are.
One of the coolest transformational sideboards I saw was the deck Steve Sadie used to win. It was he had that Flash deck that they banned immediately, right. Flash Protean Hope.
Yes.
After board, he boarded into Kyrian Dryads and won that way against decks that had hate. So Kyrian Dryad counterbalance. Yeah, so it was a really interesting sideboard, and it worked for him. He ended up winning the tournament.
Flash Grow.
Yeah,
Nice.
Flash Grow. Both players examining their opening hands. Boswell looks like he has some lands, Gataxian Probe, and a sneak attack. None of that. It doesn't look like he has any of the sideboarded cards, but looks like he's good enough to go. He's going to leave with an island and just pass.
Yep. It's man with interaction, and that's what matters here.
Yeah, multiple Force of Wills.
2 Force, 2 blue cards, Snap Keep.
Yep. One of them a Vendilion Click, so he can get a threat into play theoretically on turn 3. So pretty good hand for Mann. Boswell does have that Gataxian Probe, so if he decides to cast it on turn 2 here, he will get perfect information again.
And not going to cast it. I think this is a matchup where if you're going to cast Probe, you're just going to pay 2 life for it every time, right?
Yeah, you're going to pay 2 life, and maybe you want to do it the turn you try to go off.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I know playing Storm in Modern, that's kind of like a habit that I learned was just because you have a Probe doesn't mean you should use it.
Yep.
You should always wait until a turn when you're not sure what you're going to do with your mana. And I think that lesson carries over just as well in Legacy.
Makes sense, yeah. So it looks like Mann's got 2 Force of Wills, a Vendilion Click, and a Liliana the Veil. So exactly the kind of cards you'd want in this matchup. And Boswell, look, he still has a sneak attack, and it looks like he has an Emrakul as well. He's just trying to set up a good turn 5 or 6, it looks like. Gets a Ponder to resolve here.
Yeah, Boswell has more lands this game than last, and that's big. That actually lets him like kind of play the game he wants to play, where he is more patient, gets to set up his big spell plus backup interaction.
Yeah.
Whereas last game just stuck on 2 lands. There was never really going to be an opportunity to do that, I don't think.
And it looks like the Vendilion click could be huge in this game. The kind of way it's playing out, I can see Steven casting that click next turn and really putting throwing a wrench in Boswell's plans.
Yeah, click with Force of Will backup is a pretty big game here. He can play the land, represent the click, and even if Andy plays something that would normally require a response, Steven can respond without using his mana, so he'll still be able to have the click.
Yep.
This is not a situation where, kind of like you see in Standard, where someone passes with a bunch of mana up, and you're like, oh, it's going to be a Sphinx's Revelation. I better cast my best spell and force them to do something, so they have to use some of that mana. You can't force Steven Mann to actually use any of the click mana here.
So it looks like Steven's going to sacrifice the land on his main phase. He did draw a second click, but he also has a Wasteland in his hand, and Boswell does have a non-basic and Volcanic Island, so you think Steven's going to play the Wasteland and go after the land, or maybe play a click here? He's got a lot of options. I mean, double click, double Force of Will, maybe he wants to just have 2 counter spells. I don't know. What's more valuable here, getting a threat into play? Or?
Was that a Liliana tucked in the back of his hand, too?
Yeah, oh, yeah. So he could just go Liliana with double Force backup. Yeah, that's true.
I think that's your strongest play here.
Boswell, I believe, does have a Spell Pierce. So if Mann does go for Liliana, I think Boswell's probably okay with this, given what else could happen.
Sure.
Spell Pierce gets met by Force of Will. Not sure if Boswell has any other cards in his hand that can deal with
He did have 1 land. He had a Verdant Catacombs. So even with the Liliana uptick, he will still have Force plus 1 blue card left over after, assuming he fights over the Spell Pierce.
Yeah.
Which I have to assume he will.
So Boswell might regret not pulling the trigger on the Gataxian Probe, because it could have drawn him maybe another Spell Pierce or something.
Maybe.
Or Daze. But it looks like he's going to try to cast Spell Pierce on the Liliana. Let's see what Steven decides to do here.
You know a card that matches up pretty well with Liliana, though? Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Jace the Mind Sculptor. Pretty good.
Just kind of, it's like, oh, your Planeswalker's going to take away one of my cards? Mine's going to give me an extra one. Because you can only play that battle for so many turns before Liliana just knocks away half your permanents. But.
And Boswell brings that Gataxian Probe to the front of his hand. If there's a Spell Pierce on top of his deck, I think he's going to be pretty angry.
Likely. Spell Pierce or even a Force or something like that.
So it looks like Liliana will resolve. He'll have to discard. So he's going to discard that Gataxian Probe, actually. Mann discards the Verdant Catacombs, and like you said, he still has double a Force of Will and a blue card to pitch.
So still has 2 clicks, 2 forces, I believe. Okay, and it looks like Boswell's going to go for some action here.
Wow, so Boswell's left with just an Emrakul in his hand, and he's facing, Steven has no cards, but he does have that Liliana in play, so pretty tough spot for Andrew right here. He's going to have to be in a real top deck mode.
Yep. Well, he's going to lose that Emrakul, of course, as soon as Steven gets activate Liliana. Yeah, finding an extra Spell Pierce would have been helpful there, but it's more likely that was just going to be a bad news probe,
Yeah.
Just, cast probe, like, oh, nice hand, and then kind of glumly move about.
So let's see here. What can Boswell do against this a Jace that keeps upticking? I mean, he's never really going to get 2 cards in his hand, right?
Boswell can immediately draw Sneak Attack. And, and at that, if the Sneak Attack stays in play, which there's not really any great ways for Sman to get it out of play once it's there, then he can obviously just draw a big creature, or he can even draw any of his cantrips to go digging for 1. So yeah, Sneak Attack, the big card that Boswell's hoping to find here. Now, he needed to find it quickly.
Yeah, so really no reason for Steven to go ultimate right here. He can just discard make Boswell discard another card, and then go ultimate next turn and still have his Liliana in play.
Yeah, no real urgency here. Again, Sneak Attack, the only way he can be punished.
And then he'll just ultimate it anyway and just put Sneak Attack in a pile with an island maybe or something.
Steven, considering his brainstorms, trying to decide if he's going to use Ponder to shuffle away or shuffle and then go ding for Ponder. He has not activated Liliana yet this turn, so the ideal plan here is to, with your cantrips, locate a 1-drop or just something you can put into play.
Yeah, Voice, Delver, Dark Deathrite, anything.
Right. Using Liliana as a 1-for-1, just we both discard, that's not ideal here. This man wants to be drawing a card, playing it, and then upticking. Land works.
Yeah, land's fine. Again, if he just upticks here, he's getting, he's still getting close to ultimate. He's still gonna have that Planeswalker in play. So Boswell discards an Emrakul, and he's gonna have to shuffle back into his library.
Yep.
Still live to draw Sneak Attack, but again, it's not that great now, given the fact that Steven's gonna be able to ultimate his Liliana and still have it in play.
Yeah. I still think Sneak Attack is his best draw here.
Yeah.
Just kind of to force the issue with that Liliana. Of course, Liliana will stay now. Is there an answer to Liliana, like an actual get it off the board card?
Doesn't look like he has anything short of
one of
Breach, but he doesn't have 5 mana. Yeah.
If we were an Echoing Truth, that'd be very good.
Echoing Truth, yeah. If he did have an Echoing Truth.
Yeah, if you draw Echoing Truth, and then Echoing Truth is sneakily very good against Liliana, because you can just wait until, of course, at this stage in the game, the player of Liliana will play their last card, uptick Liliana, and then with the trigger on with the activation on the stack, you just bounce Liliana, and then Liliana is forced to discard itself.
Exactly. That would be, If Andrew did board it in, not sure. It's not a card you typically think you board in against Bug Delver.
I wouldn't think so. It's possible that it's just a card you always won against Liliana decks for that reason.
Wow, great turn there for Steven. He ultimated and then wastelanded the last Volcanic Island in play, but Boswell top decks another one, and we're into uptick mode again. Yep. Steven has yet to find a threat to actually attack Boswell with.
It wouldn't surprise me if you boarded a few out, just to make room for this extra interaction.
4 spots left in the last booster draft.
Brainstorm here.
These Liliana late games are a pretty hard lock.
So Brainstorm into land Sneak Attack would be pretty good.
Into like City of Trader Sneak Attack
or just so you have the Sneak Attack on top of your deck.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So then you can actually cast it next turn.
True.
I know. I think there was an Emrakul on top of his deck. So if that last card was Sneak Attack, this could be exciting. Again, Steven's at 16, or did he just go to 15? Did he go to the magical 15 because of that sack land?
Oh, that's big if he did.
What's his life total at?
I believe 16 is accurate, but
okay, because I think he's got to be pretty cognizant of that, because obviously you don't want to go to 15.
Yeah.
I think we all know what has 15 power.
Yes. And Steven has multiple fetch lands just sitting there in play. And we did see him earlier. He brainstormed into Ponder, and he kept the Ponder, but then he kind of thought about it for a little bit. He could have cracked a fetch land there.
Yeah.
But decided to kind of ration his life total again. 16, so much more than 15 here. Yeah, I think that's an interaction that certainly Steven's aware of here.
Yeah, so Boswell doesn't look like the Sneak Attack, and Mann reveals a Spell Pierce, flips the Delver Seekers into an Insectile Aberration, but now he's sacking the Verdant Catacombs because he doesn't want to draw the Spell Pierce.
Interesting.
So now he is at 15, but again, Boswell still needs to draw Sneak Attack and Emrakul. So
that's an odd choice there.
It is. It is strange considering like Steven has plenty of permanents to sack. You don't want to go to 15 because then you're just dead to one hit from an Emrakul. So.
I think there's an argument for actually just drawing Spell Pierce and saying go, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of like getting to ultimate Liliana again, because then I think the game's over.
Probably.
Just because you have a threat now, so.
Hey.
All right, well, let's join. Might as well. The tag team's in town. Liliana and Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Yeah, that is the 1-2 punch if I've ever seen one. And I started to say Boswell just gives up when he sees it and picks up his cards, but no, it looked like he was scooping up there. For
Boswell's good friends with Reed Duke,
right?
And if we know anything about Reed Duke, he does not concede ever.
Yes, and Boswell does not either. We saw that this morning in the Standard Open.
He's a champ.
Yeah, that's why I was so surprised. I was like, "What are you doing? Come on, play it out." But yeah, he knows. I don't have to tell him to play it out. That's for sure. Oh. So one of Jace the Mind Sculpt is showing up for Steven Mann.
So
I
get an
love
ultimate here.
that this deck can has the line of turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, turn 2 Liliana, turn 3 Jace.
Oh yeah. That's getting to play a turn 2 Planeswalker is something you can usually only do in Cube.
Yeah. For a while, you could do it in Modern, and then that got nixed. I guess you can still do it with Birds of Paradise, but that's just not nearly
That's
as
not
fun.
nearly as fun.
Yeah.
Oh wow, Steven Fate Seals Eddie has to put on the bottom here.
I wonder what card you actually care enough about to put on the bottom at this stage.
Maybe a Volcanic Island.
Maybe just land. I think
Yeah,
you
just land.
just face still land at this point. Goes for a Storm.
Looks like double Deathrite Shaman there. He's going to keep one of them. If Boswell drops to 6 this turn, it looks like a Deathrite Shaman will be lethal. Yeah, so he just has to dodge.
Yeah.
Don't think there's much that Boswell can have. It's the second time he's got to put the card in the bottom. Wow. So Deathrite Shaman comes down. Delver swings in.
Sure.
Drops
then,
Boswell to 6.
as you said, an instant activation of Deathrite will draw Boswell to 4, and then untap, and the 2 Deathrites will do it.
Yeah, so Boswell really no outs here.
Yep. Needs to win the game this turn. I think he is. I think you could spot him a free Ancestral, and he couldn't do it.
Yeah. And there's the match. Andrew Boswell falls to Steven Mann. Steven Mann now moves on to 7-0, playing Bug Delver, a deck that, he's 2 times in the feature match area, 2 times. Very impressive.